Well, this is another Hey Chango Productions brought to you by Blood. Nice universal monster recipe. Get it from me anytime you want. Just be it. Today, episode 5, we have the one, the only, Star Child moment. Star Child Chris Giordano. Yo! From Philly.
Yo! How you doing, people? How you doing? How's everybody been? It's been a long time.
Long time. So, the number one thing is, man, I've been getting a lot of messages from people. When are you coming back, brother?
Well, I was back, but everybody blinked and kind of missed it. I guess I'll be back August.
Rondo para Rico Suave. Taco Supreme.
August 14th.
Yeah,
Looks like.
everybody misses you, so we gotta get you back rolling again.
Nice.
Rolling, rawhide.
Yeah. Right on.
All right, so Chris, the first thing, man. What I ask everybody the first question: what got you into the band?
What got me into Kiss or being in a Kiss tribute?
Well, first the Kiss, because that's where it starts. That's where the
Right.
virus enters.
Yeah, right. Well, it's kind of a funny story. Long, way back when. So yeah, I was one of those. We have friends. I forget how they put it, but one of the Dynasty kids. I showed up during "I Was Made for Loving You" when I was 6 years old, and not knowing any better. It's just look. This is just when I happened to get into it. I was in public school. I must have been in like second grade or something, and there was this kid. I don't know whatever happened to this guy, but in today's world, I want to assume that maybe Gus became, Augusta, maybe. Uh, you know, uh, yeah. We used to play. So let's think about the '70s. What was popular: Jaws, and Star Wars, and Kiss. So during recess, we would play. In recess in the schoolyard. We would play our version of Jaws, and I and another boy would usually volunteer to be the shark and chase people, and Gus always said, "I'll be the girl," you know. So anyway, long story short, Gus showed me magazine pictures of Kiss, and I was fascinated just by looking at the pictures. I was just like, hey, wow. I mean, they're pretty cool. It's like action figures, superheroes come to life. I was big into the Superman movies and Star Wars and I was like I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I don't even know if I heard them yet. I think I just was going by pictures. And Gus was the one telling me, and he claimed to know a lot more about Kiss, like stuff that nowadays I know not to be true. Like he claimed to know what each member's favorite cigarettes were. Like now we know Paul and Gene don't smoke, and he would tell me, oh, Paul smokes this and Ace smokes that, and I'm like, okay, wow, well, I guess that's kind of cool, but we were even too young to smoke cigarettes. But anyway, I was fascinated with the pictures and everything Gus was telling me. So every weekend, my grandmother used to take me to the local down in South Jersey. They have a thing called the Berlin Market, which is still there, and they used to have a record store. And they used to have this. I wish I had it. You would love it. There was this old cutout from the Hotter Than Hell promo to promote Hotter Than Hell, but this was already 1979, and the record store still had it like hanging from the ceiling with like, the album cover basically that we did that promo picture like.
Yeah.
Well, it was a cutout hanging from the ceiling of the album cover basically, and so anyway, every week my grandmother would take me to this flea market, and I wouldn't even buy albums. I would just go right to the 45 section where you could just buy singles basically. And every week I would buy like a different Kiss single. And I want to say I Was Made for Love You might have been the first one I got because I remember that being my first favorite Kiss song. And but every week, I'd go get a new one, and the famous like Detroit Rock City's side A and Beth is on side B, and that whole thing. And then little by little, I got albums, and I remember when I first got the Dynasty album, my dad, who was so against me even being into rock music, because all the of
Yeah.
all
I spent all that money.
the forbidden fruit, like my dad made it seem like what is it? But then he was more like just about like what is this garbage? This isn't music. Music back in my day, Frank Sinatra and all this stuff. And
It's everything that kids love. That's Yo,
yeah,
now here's a good one. When you're in school, did Kiss? Do you have any stories where Kiss got you in trouble in
well,
school?
not in the. I always heard stories of like it never happened to me as far as in this way. Like it never happened. I always heard stories of like Kiss and Led Zeppelin fans would get in fights. Like oh, Kiss is a cartoon, Zeppelin is the cool band. You would get into
Oh
like
yeah, we all been yeah, yeah, definitely.
but what happened with me was and I mean, obviously, the people watching don't know the whole story, but you do about like, you know, me being from South Philly, Rocky Balboa
Yo,
territory. Yo, Rocky, and so it's funny. My older cousins, would call like what we call Guidos. It's so funny. Like my older cousins, not to use your name in a derogatory manner, but they were used to be called Vinnies. Vinnies were what became known as
oh,
Guidos. And
absolutely. Yo,
so I grew up in Italian Catholic school. Guidos, everybody was into dance music. And
absolutely. I love disco. I love disco.
yeah, I mean, me too, of course, the Bee Gees and all that stuff. I was into it all. And John Travolta was probably my first, acting hero. I just watched last night. I just watched Urban Cowboy again after all these years.
Great flick, great flick.
Yeah, my uncle Anthony. That's a whole other story. My uncle Anthony went to Houston during that whole Urban Cowboy craze, and but it didn't end well for him. Anyway, long story short, yeah, no. In fact, he went down to Houston. He went down to Houston
Houston,
during that whole
Ohio.
yeah, urban cowboy craze, and we got in a bad car accident down there. But anyway, so yeah, when you say about getting me in trouble, so yeah, the kids were into disco and everything, and I'd be bringing like we'd have these like show and tell things at school, and people would bring in like
Absolutely.
dance
Love
records.
show and tell.
They would bring in dance records, and I'd be bringing in Kiss, Motley Crue, and I remember one kid told me this doesn't you can't dance to this stuff, and he's like, and he goes, it sounds like a buzzsaw going off, like the I guess the crunch of the guitars. He says he would tell me it sounded like a buzzsaw going off, and so that was like the only confrontation. It would never be like physical or anything, but it was just like I was the outcast, I was the freak because I like Kiss and they all like dance music. So I never really, fit in with the grade school kids, and it didn't get much better in high school, really. But there was like, there was like the crew that, we were into. rock and metal, but you know, still like kind of the outcast even in school because I didn't fit in with the jocks or the typical dance crew. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was how would you say? It wasn't easy being a Kiss fan for sure. But the thing that really put me over the edge, and my mother, I can still hear her voice in my head telling me how Kiss ruined my life. They ruined your life. You don't see what they did to you. Um, but the thing the thing that put me over the edge was that I read in a magazine, reading the bios about each member because all right, everybody knows I play Paul. Paul's my guy. That's who became my idol. But I started out. I used to run around with my tongue out. And I don't. You got the tongue way more than I do. I mean, I used to just being a stupid kid run around with the tongue, thinking how cool Gene was. Even though he scared me at first. I remember seeing the whole, Kiss Meets the Fan. Like before, when Kiss Meets the Fan first came on, I never actually saw it on TV because I was scared of Gene. I remember when they would show the coming attraction for it, and you'd see him shoot that stupid looking fire that looks stupid now, but at the time scared me. And I seen the fire come out of his mouth. I remember running in the other room, and I never actually watched the movie until years later. But I was fascinated with, like, from looking at Gene on the posters, and so I went through a period of liking each member. Like Gene was like my favorite for a minute, and then Ace, and then I even went through a Peter phase. Like I remember, I had this pair of drumsticks, and obviously I didn't have any drums. I would just like take boxes and album covers and beat them with the drumsticks, and that was my Peter phase.
Whatever you had, whatever you got.
Yeah, but then the thing that put me over the edge was I'm reading the magazine and the bio talks about each member, and it goes, Paul Stanley was born January 20th, and that's all I had to see right there because it happens to be my birthday is also January 20th. Of course, I'm not as old as Paul. He was born in 52 and I was born in 73. But
it's a sign. It's a sign in the
stars. I mean, like literally, I saw this in the magazine and ran downstairs screaming, "Mom, I'm born to be a star child." Well, that was it. That was the beginning of the end, and I just, I just from that moment, I just like transfixed on Paul and absorbed like the whole character, and then I, going to high school. Like you had and the Animalized video came out, the Exposed video, which like me and my friends in school we could mimic that whole like video like line for line, this is from Natural Roots, and oh, Gene's up, let's go see what's going on. Yeah, and I would just like, then when it got to the point where, long before YouTube and social media where you can, there was the whole tape trading thing and, the big thrill Kiss was Vision. Kiss bootlegs and Kiss Vision. Yeah, right. And like, oh wow, I found out that there's this show I've never seen from the 70s and here's another one and here's another one. And I would just go and I'd sit in my room like a zombie and just watch these videos and just absorb everything that I was seeing. Like just like especially as far as like Paul goes. Like that's why like with all the raps and everything, it's like it's like okay, yeah, I'll do the Cold Gin rap, but I could do the Cold Gin rap from Japan in 1995 or Australia in 1980, and it's like it just like, and that was what was so cool. Like sometimes you're like, oh, how many Kiss shows can you see? It's like there's always something different, You know, whether it was, even though they basically did the same show every night, the way Paul would phrase Detroit Rock City in Australia compared to Detroit, and how he would change the raps up, and
Oh,
or yeah, or depending on
one
the
of the best
show.
raps. I wish you could do this rap. The rap where he yells at the dude, "You, yeah,
that
you. This is a
was
rock and roll party. It's not a rumble."
this was it's funny you mention it's funny
Hey,
you mention that.
you.
Yeah, you, hey, this is a rock and roll party, not a rumble.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. It's a rock and roll party. This ain't no rumble.
and you, and well, it's funny you mention that because in one of my early tribute bands, that was actually one of our favorites, and I actually did recreate that. Um, whether it was a real rumble happening in the crowd or not, like I basically, I had to do it. I had to, it came up somehow during the show where I would make that happen, and but that was always the fun part. And well, we'll get into the whole tribute thing, but yeah. I mean, like that was always the fascination for me. And the other thing is like with Kiss being like a visual band. Yes, I got into them during makeup period, but the '80s and everything that was going on is when I became fascinated with just like Paul's voice and the raps and and then it was great that they put the makeup back on, but I still loved all the stuff he was doing in the '80s. I like uh, just the way he was, the tone of his voice,
Right. So
and
right there.
some of the
So
some of
what makes
the
all
what's
right?
that?
What? Yeah. What? Do you have to do anything? Because you. I'm gonna say you and Billy May are about the closest guys I ever heard sound like Paul. So I mean, do you have to do anything to like? I know I do certain things to do certain voices and certain characters. Do you do the same thing when you go to do Paul?
When it's so funny, it's so funny when I first tried the whole way the tribute thing came about. Um, I had no intentions of even doing a tribute band. Me and a bass player friend of mine, we were looking for a drummer for an original band that we were doing. I actually did an original band, believe it or not. And this was like a very primitive, like everything I wrote was like the most, it always sounded like a cross between like Black Sabbath and Metallica. It was like, more chunky, like heavy doom and gloom type stuff. And my voice was nothing like Paul. In fact, I mean, I don't think I sounded like him, but it always felt like the way I sang almost sounded closer to Ace when I first started. Like, because I still didn't really even know how to sing. It sounded like more monotone, kind of like lower register. And I mean, the only reason we got into the band and did a tribute thing was because we had to find common ground to audition the drummer. So the only band that all three of us knew was Kiss. So we started playing Kiss songs just to get comfortable. And the drummer, who never even got into the tribute game, he was the one to suggest, "Hey, this Kiss stuff sounds pretty good. We should do a tribute band." And really, the only reason that I wound up being Paul was because, well, he was my favorite, and I played rhythm guitar. But beyond that, I can't really say I was qualified to do it. I didn't really sound like him at the time. But the thing that I realized was, and here's where it all started to come together, was you have to get into the register of Paul's voice when you do the raps. So the "how you doing" gets you into that register, and you just put it into the vocal. Oh, singing, and little by little, I worked it into when I realized what I had to do to get into that stage voice. I just incorporated it into the singing, and so that's how it all came together for me. But like, I don't have to think about it now. The blessing or the curse is that every time I try and sing anything, it almost sounds like Paul. You know, so now it's like if you had asked me what's my natural voice, I couldn't even tell you at this point. It's like because everything that comes out kind of sounds like Paul because I put so many years into doing it. Like so, you know, and like we were talking about before in our privately about how like the clock is ticking and we got to do this while we can. Like hey, like how Gene says in the Tom Snyder interview, like True Confessions, like
Right.
well, True Confessions right now is that you know the best way, because I know you've actually kind of like you've been wondering this yourself, and this kind of might be able. This might be the way to explain it. Is like how an actor is known for Batman, but then one day he decides he doesn't want to be Batman. He wants to be Spider-Man. Well,
Right.
you're Batman. Why are you trying to? Yeah, it's like you get stereotyped. People expect you to do what they know you for, and quite honestly, that did kind of mess me up a little bit. And I think I did go through a phase where it was like I wanted to do other things, and it just never panned out. Or if I did try another band, people would be like, "When's your next Kiss show?" It's like, oh,
All
okay,
right, it's the classic typecast. I mean,
yeah,
you're known for the, I go through it all the time. I love Ace Frehley; he's my favorite one to do.
yeah,
But I do Gene, so everybody loves the Gene that I do. It's kind of the same thing. But I've also done Brian Johnson. I've also done Jim Morrison.
yeah,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, and then what
yeah,
happens is you get so typecast as Gene, and I get it. Yeah. But man, there's like I said, it's almost like you're meant to do it. You're born on the same dude's days. Like you sound just like him to me. And you played with some, you played with some of the greats, what I call the OGs of the biz, Steve
yeah.
Clark, and our buddy up in Canada, what's his name, Rick Priest. There's got to be good
Yeah.
stories about some of the bands you played with. There's got to be some good stories. What do you got?
Well,
Especially about Rick Priest.
what's that? Well, it's like, what can even be said at this point? I mean, some stuff I don't even know what could be said in public airwaves, but
There's got to
I
be. You
also,
had so many good stories. There's got to be some. There's got to be one that stands out. Like look how we met. The first time we played, we didn't know each other. We only knew each other through Facebook, and we hooked up with Steve Clark down at the Golden Nugget, and that's the first time we played together. And
yeah, that was already 13 years ago. That was 2012. That was,
it was Kiss
and
Army. Steve Clark wasn't there two Kiss Armies? There was Steve
the
Clark's Kiss Army that stayed ahead of the original Kiss Army.
right, and that's what they would. That's how they would clarify it. One would just be called Kiss Army, and one was called Original Kiss
Right.
Army. But then there was, yeah, well, the original Kiss Army was the one that started in Long Island with Seda, right?
Right. Now, maybe you can answer this. Why? This is one thing that you can probably answer. Why has Rick Priest never put any videos of him singing? We always see pictures of him.
We haven't even seen those in a while.
Well, yeah, what happened to him? He like disappeared off the face of the planet.
Well, I mean, as far as I know, he's still kicking up in Toronto, and I'm telling you, there are so many stories. But well, one I'll tell you a way Rick got me in trouble once was and Rick's one of these guys. It's like people don't understand who are not in the tribute game, but like when they see that movie Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg, there's a lot that is very true about rival bands and how serious some bands take. You know, 'Cause I remember I heard you talking about it before about like when guys will start counting how many studs are in the jacket, and that's not oh, you're a hack. You only got like 50 studs. There should be 100 there. It's like well, Rick was one of those guys where and believe me, like I loved it. I loved it in a way. I loved the fact that he paid attention to the detail, but it was but it literally was like he was like Kiss detail 24/7. Like it would be like constantly talking about every little aspect of it, and always working on it. No, at all times of the day and night. So one story is we came off the road. We were touring in Hotter Than Hell, and we came back to the Philly area. I was living with my first wife. We were going to be married. We were still just going out, and we went to her place when we came off the road. And Rick was staying in another room, and in the middle of the night, I hear pounding like a hammer, like pounding on the. She had like an Italian marble dining room table, and in the middle of the night, he's pounding studs into a belt or a guitar strap that he was working on. And and my wife at the time, she was like, if you don't stop him, I'm gonna put you both out on the street, And I'm like, Rick, what are you doing? Yeah, man, working on the belt, It's like, but I mean that was Rick. I mean, 24/7. He was a Kiss detail machine. Like whether he was talking about the costumes or making the costumes. He was always like just it got to the point where as much as I love Kiss, it's like I wanted to hear anything else. Like okay, we talked about Kiss for 2 days straight. Let's talk about something else.
Right. He likes a lot of the same things we do. He grew up with a lot of the same things. I had some great talks with him over the years on the phone.
Yeah. I mean, no, I'm telling you, we met. Yeah, we met not knowing each other. I got thrown into. It was the summer of 2000, and I did and I was still new to the whole tribute thing. I didn't even have a real costume at the time. I had like when you hear all the stories about before Kiss had money and like they just had regular leather jackets and store bought like tights and stuff. It's like basically, yeah, I got thrown out onto the road, still green, and wound up playing cross country. We played Hawaii, we played Vegas, and this was all the summer, and this is during the so-called farewell tour when Kiss was on their farewell tour. Hotter Than Hell, we would be either right before Kiss got to a town. Sometimes the same night Kiss was in town, or we got there right after Kiss was there. And so everybody was still in like this Kiss frenzy and like couldn't get enough of it. And we had some great shows
Now, is this the time? Is this the time you're with Scott McCluskey?
Well, yeah, Hotter Than Hell. That was Scott.
Is this where the cornfield story comes in?
Oh my God, yeah, that was one of many. Yeah, I don't know how I got through that tour. I really should have came home in a body bag, really, because we drove and we didn't tour in style. It was a Geo Metro. I don't even think they make these cars anymore. It was called a Geo Metro.